Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a new series at Pies Footy. It's called Pie Watch. So the basis of it is going into the fixture against the Dockers or whoever it may be. We'll put 4 or 5 players under the microscope for both good and bad reasons. What we're hoping for them going into the game and highlighting some stats that maybe we aren't privy to. And yeah, let me know if you guys like it. That's the most important thing. Let me know in the comment section what your feelings are towards it. Am I missing the mark with any of with this series? Is there something I can add to it? Or perhaps is there something I can take away from it? Let me know. So we'll start with our stand-in skipper from the game against Essendon, Nick Daicos, and what we want from Nick going into this game, especially with players like Scott Pendlebury not being available and Jordan De Goey as well. Although De Goey hasn't been in form and hasn't been in the middle, I think Nick Daicos is. We might just require a superhero cape man type of performance going into this game, seeing as how we expect Fremantle to come into this game quite hot, particularly through the midfield where they were completely out wrestled. They had their colours lowered and they were embarrassed at Marvel. So Nick Daicos needs to come to the coalface and be ready to fight. So what do we remember about the game against Geelong with regards to Nick Daicos and the tag? For the first 3 quarters, he was outstanding. He finished the game with 28 touches and a goal. But that fourth quarter, he was absent. He only had 3 touches in that quarter. It was actually his second lowest rated game of the season, if you exclude the game against GWS, because he was obviously subbed off quite early and was hampered for the second half. Now, his standards are quite high, so understand that even though it was his second lowest rated game, it's still relative to the AFL standard. It is quite high. Give me 1 second. I've got these new retainers in and they're getting in the way of my speech, but that's okay. We'll work through it. So like I said, without Pendles, I really do think we need a 2024 type of performance from Nick Daicos in front of a hostile crowd against a team that's looking to bounce back very quickly. And I think Nick Daicos knows in that fourth quarter, he would have liked to have had more of an impact. That's when your superstars come out to play. And look, sometimes the ball just doesn't get near you in that fourth quarter, but I'm sure Nick is always looking for ways to impose himself when he isn't having the impact that he needs. And I think we're going to need that going into this game against the Fremantle Dockers. Next up, Tim Membrey. Going into this game, we won't have Myercheck and we won't have McStay. McStay has been a really good role player, pinch hitting in a ruck and offering some aerial presence in the forward line. Myercheck has been by far and away our best forward. He would be borderline nearing career best form, kicked 4 goals against Geelong. He's just always up for a contest and he's actually clunking a lot of his contested contests. So, contested contests, that's a good one. Looking at Tim Membrey's stats, he's averaging 2.6 shots per game at a 55% clip, which is our most accurate player with more than 1 shot per game. So if you are just gauging on players in our team who have taken more, who are averaging more than a shot per game, Tim Membrey is our most accurate player in front of goal and he's one of our most experienced players. So that's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you bring him into the side. He gives you peace of mind when he's lining up in front of goal. And we're going to need that even more against the Dockers with the absences of Brodie Myercheck and Daniel McStay. He's been very competitive at ground level and he's also applying tackles. So you see that on television, but you also see his work rate even more when you're at the game. So I reckon we should hope for and expect a really strong performance from Tim Membrey. It would be no secret and it'd be very clear to him that he needs to step up with certain players missing. He's currently, against the Dockers, he actually averages 2 goals a game. That's 18 goals in 9 games, which is one of his best returns against all teams. Not only is he impacting the scoreboard against the Dockers, he's averaging 14 touches a game against the Dockers, which is his second highest clip against any team that he's faced over the course of his career. So I'm really tipping that Tim Membrey will have a strong output against the Dockers. Next up, we have McCreery. Beau McCreery is currently enjoying his highest rated season so far in a very difficult role that he plays in, that high half forward role. Sometimes it is very thankless. It is. It's that role and the winger role that are probably the most difficult to play. And sometimes you find yourself on the outer periphery of the game. And that's by no wrongdoing of your own. It's just sometimes the game is played on the other side, or you're just missed in that stoppage contest. Or the ball goes over your head in the forward line. And when you got people like Daicos who demands presence in the forward line, and you got Membrey, McStay, Myercheck, Jamie Elliott, Bobby Hill, Lockie Schultz, sometimes you're just not going to be the go-to guy, and Beau doesn't really possess much of an aerial presence or a mark on lead. He's just your get down and dirty, win the contest, and bring the ball forward and apply pressure, apply tackles. So without Daicos, does he get more of a look inside 50? And without Daicos in the midfield, does he see more midfield time? We know sometimes he gets thrown into the centre bounces. Or is it Lockie Sullivan? If Lockie Sullivan gets the nod to be selected, and then also does he start, or is it a sub? I think those are factors that will play into how much of an impact Beau McCreery could possibly have. I mean, Beau against Brisbane and Sydney, he was outstanding. It was his 2 highest rated games this season so far. He had 100% disposal efficiency in both those games, had some really nice kicks going inside 50 in both of those games, which is not typically a strong suit in Beau's game. So that was really nice to see. And it seemed like he was taking some really big strides in his development, being particularly young. I think he's still, 23, 24. So he's a part of that young core moving forward. However, in the last 2 games, he's only had 2 score involvements, and that's a drastic fall off from his previous 2, being Brisbane and Sydney, where he had 13 score involvements in those 2 games. You're hoping he can recapture some of that form. We thought he was trending in a new direction, sort of breaking out of the role that sort of limits him. I'm not going to call for some people are saying he needs to be dropped, blah, blah, blah. I think at the end of the day, the role he plays is difficult, and it's also difficult to ask for him to break out of that role. But I think this is a really important game for Beau McCreery, just to buck the trend with his limited input/impact that he's had over the last couple games. Lastly, we have one of our veterans, Jeremy Howe, who was duly missed in the game against Geelong. At the end of the day, he had to be managed, and what will be. But he comes back in now with Brader Maynard out. It calls for some interesting matchups inside our D50 with Luke Jackson in there, Jaya missed, Josh Tracy. He could probably match up on any of them at this point. It's going to be, difficult. Fremantle, when they're fit and firing and they're moving the ball, their forward line is, very dangerous and can hurt you in many different ways. So we expect Jeremy Howe, who's been in outstanding form, and I'll probably take that all the way back to the last 5 rounds of last year. He's carried that into this year. He is arguably one of our most important players right now in 2025, and I dare say he'd be right up there in the Copeland Trophy race. Coaches' votes as a 3rd key defender in 2 games this season is a nice little feather in his cap. So just goes to show that the coaches have acknowledged how impactful Jeremy Howe has been. He had 12 intercept possessions against Essendon. He just couldn't get past him. He was a brick wall defensively and really helped out the likes of Darcy Moore. Darcy Moore missed that game. So he really helped out Billy Frampton and stepped into a role that maybe he doesn't typically play as a second key defender. And then, by the way, I'm not sure if you've noticed, but Jeremy Howe has not lost a defensive one-on-one contest this year, whereas over the course of his career, he typically loses 30% of his defensive contests. Now, take it with a grain of salt, because when we are winning the contest and we are locking the ball in our forward half, balls are going to be hacked out hacked out of our opposition's forward 50 or D50, and our defense is set up well, which makes it easier for our defenders to pick off and intercept plays. In saying that, he was put in some pretty precarious positions against Essendon and in previous games this year as well, and he's stood up tall. And I don't know if he's done more defensive work over the preseason, but whatever he's doing, it's certainly translating into a more strong defensive one-on-one effort in 2025. So I'm hoping Howe can continue to do that because it alleviates the likes of Darcy Moore, Billy Frampton, Brazzy Maynard, so on and so forth. That is the Pie Watch. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know what your feedback is, and maybe we'll be back next week. Go Pies.